think you can't make mistakes. But the choices you make could get yourself and everyone under your command killed. But I believe in you, Jim.
Darkness is coming.
This could just be the beginning.
Beginning of what?
All-out war. I request permission to go after him.
I cannot allow you to do this.
Jim, you're not actually going after this guy, are you?
Let's go get this son of a bitch.
You are a pawn, Kirk.
Sir, there's a ship heading right for us.
You can't even guarantee the safety of your own crew. Now, shall we begin?
I'm sorry.
We're outnumbered. Outgunned.
I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I only know what I can do.
The ship's dead, sir. She's gone.
No, she's not.
No ship should go down without her captain.
I believe in you, Jim.
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Star Trek film series Rewatch. Join us each week as we head into the final frontier aboard the Starship Enterprise. Send your thoughts to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Join us at our Facebook page, facebook.com/rewatchpodcast, and follow us on Twitter @rewatchpod.
Today we're discussing Star Trek Into Darkness, starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Bruce Greenwood, Carl Urban, Zoe Saldana, Simon Pegg, John Cho, Benedict Cumberbatch, Alice Eve, Peter Weller, and Leonard Nimoy, directed by J.J. Abrams. Welcome back to the Star Trek film series Rewatch. I'm Cory, and I will walk over your cold corpses to recover my people.
And this is Nathan, and remind me to never piss off Mr. Sulu.
How are you, Nathan?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. We're back. We had a week off there in the middle.
Yeah, just to let everyone know, I can't. Yeah, we had a week off. I had to move interstate.
No.
With my 2 under 5 kids. So I've kind of been busy. I'm sorry. We missed a week. Sorry.
You're a bold man.
I know. Anyway, it's all good. So I'm back online now. So this is the last Star Trek rewatch, episode 12, Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yes, or as I say it in the beginning, it is Star Trek Into Darkness.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. And we talked about this off mic before, but this isn't our last episode, is it? Because there's a new film coming out next year.
There is, and we'll discuss at the end of the show what our plans are for when that comes out. But starting at the beginning, what's your history? with Star Trek Into Darkness?
This came out a couple of years ago. I think it was 2012. No, 2013, I should say, sorry. I remember being reasonably excited about this film. I went and saw it, and I saw it with a friend of mine late at night at Broadway Cinemas in Sydney, and I walked out of it, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought I enjoyed it anyway. I've got a fairly different opinion now, but I'll get into that as we kind of go on. Yeah, this is an interesting film for me, but anyway, we'll get more into the discussion as we go on.
Yes, and of course I went and saw this in the theater as well. I try to see most stuff in theaters these days. I'm kind of big on that.
Just okay. Bit of a disclaimer here. We used to work together in the film industry, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, and I remember when this film kind of came out, and there was a lot of stuff kind of going on with it in the background, wasn't there?
Hell of a lot.
a lot, and if I remember rightly, there was a lot of kind of maybe not panicking behind the scenes, but there was kind of stuff that was kind of happening, wasn't there?
Well, it was down to the wire on the edit. Like, they were editing this film, like, right down to the time it was going to come out. Like, the day of release here in Australia, which was a week before the United States.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so they were really kind of pushing the deadlines a little bit, weren't they?
Yeah, very much.
Anyway, it is what it is.
Okay, so I'll get into a synopsis here.
Yep.
And this is lengthy, so I apologize, but a lot goes on in this movie.
A lot does go on in this film. It's very complicated.
All right, so.
No, let's do it.
The USS Enterprise is sent to observe planet Nibiru, but finds a volcano about to erupt and wipe out the primitive locals. Attempting to stop the eruption, Spock's life is jeopardized, forcing Kirk to break the Prime Directive and reveal the Enterprise to the planet's civilization to rescue him, causing Kirk to lose command of the Enterprise, and Admiral Pike returns to the captain's chair. However, Starfleet agent John Harrison bombs a secret Section 31 installation in London, and an emergency meeting of high-ranking officers is called at Starfleet's headquarters, which Kirk attends as Pike's first officer. The meeting is attacked by a gunship piloted by Harrison. Kirk takes the gunship down, but Harrison escapes and Pike dies. Resuming command, Kirk meets with Admiral Marcus, who authorizes Kirk to hunt down Harrison, who has fled to the Klingon homeworld of Kronos. And the Enterprise is supplied with 72 long-range prototype photon torpedoes and is ordered to fire all of them at Harrison's location once he is found. Assuming those weapons to be too dangerous, Scotty refuses to take them aboard and is relieved of duty. The Admiral's daughter, scientist Carol Marcus, a familiar name there, also joins the crew under a false identity, and Chekhov is promoted to chief engineer. After arriving at the Klingon homeworld, the Enterprise's warp core malfunctions, leaving the ship stranded in space. With repairs underway, Kirk, Spock, and Uhura use a commandeered Klingon shuttle to enter Kronos. They are detected by a Klingon patrol ship, and despite Uhura's attempts to negotiate, the Klingons prepare to kill them. When John Harrison single-handedly kills the Klingon patrol, then surrenders to Kirk after learning the precise number of torpedoes aimed at him. Back on the Enterprise, Harrison reveals his real identity. No surprise here, he is Khan Noonien Singh, a genetically enhanced Superman who has been in cryosleep for 300 years after waging an unsuccessful war on Earth to eradicate all those inferior to himself and his superhuman comrades. He suggests Kirk should take a closer look at the 72 prototype torpedoes and tells him a special set of coordinates. Kirk orders McCoy to take apart one of the torpedoes and contacts Scotty back on Earth to examine the coordinates. The torpedoes are found to each contain a genetically engineered human in cryosleep, the remaining members of Khan's crew from the Botany Bay. Khan explains that Admiral Marcus awakened Khan to force him to use his superior intellect and savagery to develop advanced weapons to start a war with the Klingons, keeping his crew as hostages. Kirk realizes that the Enterprise's warp core has been sabotaged by Marcus's orders, making the covert operation to kill Khan a one-way ticket. At the same time, Scotty arrives at the coordinates and finds a secret Starfleet shipyard, which he infiltrates. Back on the Enterprise, the defective warp core is brought back online, but Chekhov expresses concern at using it. An unregistered Federation battleship arrives, the USS Vengeance, a massive vessel built for combat which dwarfs the Enterprise. Admiral Marcus reveals himself as the commander of the vessel, demanding Kirk hand over Khan. Kirk refuses and the Enterprise warps away to Earth to return Khan to stand trial for his crimes. The Enterprise is severely damaged when the Vengeance easily catches them, and Kirk agrees to hand over Khan and the 72 bodies in cryosleep in exchange for the lives of his crew. Marcus beams over his daughter to prevent her being used against him, and is about to destroy the Enterprise when the power fails at the hands of Scotty. Kirk allies himself with Khan and boards the enemy ship, and reuniting with Scotty, they take the bridge. Meanwhile, Spock contacts old Spock, Leonard Nimoy returning to the role, to learn of Khan's history and how to defeat him. Khan betrays Kirk and takes control of the ship, killing Admiral Marcus in the process. Khan negotiates with Spock for Kirk's life and beams aboard the 72 torpedoes onto the Vengeance. Khan beams Kirk and the rest of the boarding party back to the Enterprise in order to destroy it, but Spock had removed the cryotubes and armed the torpedoes, which detonate. Khan is sent into a furious rage, believing his crew to have been killed, and both ships start descending towards Earth's surface. The crew of the Enterprise finally manage to halt their ship's descent as Kirk sacrifices his life to realign the warp core, dying from radiation poisoning. The enemy ship crashes down on San Francisco, and Spock rages after Khan. Meanwhile, Dr. Leonard McCoy discovers that Khan's blood may reanimate the dead Kirk. In the last possible moments, Uhura prevents Spock from killing Khan, and he is taken captive. Kirk reacts positively to the treatment and is revived and put back on active duty, and the Enterprise is rechristened and departs on a 5-year mission of exploration.
Wow.
So yes, like I said, lengthy and intricate plot.
Exactly. Before we get to the main discussion, we should get into our usual amount of trivia as well. Star Trek Into Darkness premiered at Event Cinemas in Sydney, of all places, on Australia on April 23rd, 2013, but was actually released on May 9 in Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, Europe, and Peru, with other countries actually following. The film was given a wide release on May 16 in the United States and Canada, opening at IMAX cinemas a day earlier.
I honestly can't remember if I saw this the week of release. I may have. I think, but at the same time, I'm trying to remember. Like maybe I waited a week for just the initial like large amounts of people going to see it.
Due to like my life just being busy, I very rarely see films on the weekend that they open. It's normally 3 or 4 weeks after they kind of open. I kind of finally find a night to get there and actually do it. So I remember I saw this. I think there was hardly anyone in the theater, like maybe 1 or 2 people, and that was kind of it. So it was definitely a couple of weeks after all the chaos kind of died down.
Yeah. Okay, so this film is, of course, the highest grossing film in the entire Star Trek franchise. But funnily enough, it didn't even reach like number 1 in the highest grossing of the year. I mean, we've talked about like over all these movies about where a Star Trek film sits in its grossings for the year. This one, I mean, it made nearly $500 million in the box office.
Keep in mind, though, the budget for the film was $185 million.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge money. I mean, like I don't even think the Avengers cost $185 million. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and the Avengers made over $1 billion.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, that's more than double what this movie made.
I know for a fact that a lot of the studios consider films like this, if they don't make, you know, $600, $700, $800 million, almost like a failure in some regards. I mean, I'm not too sure exactly how it works. I mean, I know it costs $185 to actually make the film, but to market it and actually all the you know, the posters and the buses and all that kind of stuff, it must cost at least double. You must have to double the budget. That's what I kind of have always read, that you kind of have to double the budget to actually make money back.
Yeah, exactly right. Spend the equal amount of its budget just to market the film and get it out there, get people to see it. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy, isn't it? So the fact that you can have a movie that makes $500 million and still almost be considered a failure. But in saying that, though, they are making a sequel, which is called Star Trek Beyond, as we speak. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know what, though? It did connect with people, didn't it? I mean, a lot of people saw this movie, didn't they?
They did, yes. And like I sort of threw out there while I was giving the synopsis, it was hard to not know that Benedict Cumberbatch's character of John Harrison was Khan. I mean, most people saw it coming.
I mean, if you're like me, who spends a lot of time on the internet looking at various kind of film sites, I remember at the time when this kind of came out, there was a lot of conjecture, wasn't there?
Yes, there was.
Like, to the point where J.J. Abrams and a lot of people kind of inside the film flat out pointedly kind of just said, no, it's not Khan. He's playing an entirely new character, and they kind of kept everything very, very hush-hush. And it was only at the 11th hour that they finally decided to reveal it was Khan. I mean, they should have just said outright that it was Khan, wasn't it?
We're doing Khan, yeah. And it's here in the trivia as well that Benedict Cumberbatch himself was not told that his character was Khan. Like, he auditioned for the part, and he got the part, and then it wasn't until later, after he was cast, that they told him, your character is Khan.
Yeah. It would have been nice, though, for me or you to go to the movie and actually not know. Like, there are so few surprises in modern cinema, in my opinion. I think this film kind of suffers a little bit from the weight of the internet and the weight of the fanboy community that kind of corrals behind the scenes at every kind of salivating kind of nuance regarding the film. Every kind of behind the scene pic, every kind of script note, every trailer, like there's very kind of few secrets kind of in film anymore. Like, do you think, and I don't mean to kind of go back, like, do you think if E.T. was released today, would they have been able to kind of keep E.T., the look of E.T. a secret?
Oh, definitely not. No. They wouldn't even do it for anticipation purposes. They almost have to do it because people need to know what it looks like in order to go and see it. And people need to be able to criticize things.
Yeah, and in saying that too, like, do you remember that film Cloverfield that came out a few years ago, which coincidentally I think JJ was involved with?
He produced that film.
Yeah, but do you remember there was that big thing about the monster, and that they didn't show you what the monster actually looked like?
Mm-hmm.
And they actually did keep that a secret, I think.
And I have to admit, I'm trying to stay cold on Star Wars because I don't want to know what the plot of the film is. I mean, I know all the big things that they've released. You know, they're getting back original cast members and so on and so forth. I don't want to know what the story's about. I want to go into it cold and see it.
I would love it if they were brave enough to actually release that film in December and not show you what Luke Skywalker and Leia look like before the movie comes out, because all we've seen is a teaser trailer which showed nothing really, and then they showed that trailer which was pretty good. I thought it gave you just enough without actually giving you too much, and
not giving anything away.
Yeah, I really kind of hope they're brave enough to. There's probably going to be another trailer between now and the movie comes out, but I hope that doesn't show you too much. I would love to watch that movie without and actually be surprised a little bit, like genuinely surprised.
Exactly right. And that's why I'm trying my best to avoid any spoilers. I will kill anybody who spoils any major plot points of that movie on me.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, it's not far away. It's only a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
What else is there? There was an inside joke with Chekhov being asked to put on a red shirt by Kirk, and Chekhov's less than enthusiastic reaction. In an actual interview, Walter Koenig stated that being a part of Star Trek of all these years was fantastic, as long as you didn't have to wear a red shirt because they were always killed.
Yeah, I do love that moment in this film. We'll get to it.
Yeah, it is. Carl Urban actually pays homage to DeForest Kelley as he wears a pinky ring on his left hand, just as Kelly did in the original Star Trek series and all 6 movies.
Nice drop. I like it.
Speaking of Carl Urban, that he's one of the only actors that they don't really give much to do in this film.
Yeah, he takes a bit of a backseat.
He takes a total backseat. He's barely in it. It's really irritating, and he's one of the best parts. But
I know, right?
Anyway.
Well, something I would have hated. J.J. Abrams actually considered putting William Shatner in a pivotal but small role here in this film, and ultimately he changed his mind. Thank God.
I know. This was Leonard Nimoy's final acting role before his death on February 27, 2015. So he only died a couple of months ago at the age of 83. I think we kind of spoke about it. It would have been nice for Nimoy to kind of do a bit more. I remember you said that he did a role on Fringe.
Yes, he did. Yeah. In between Star Trek and this film, Into Darkness. And getting deeper into casting here, Benicio del Toro was actually in early talks for the role of John Harrison, or Khan. But ultimately that didn't pan out. And I think that really would have given away who the character was.
Yeah. Maybe would have suited the character a little bit more.
It would. I know a lot of people threw up that, they really reinterpreted the character of Khan by casting Benedict Cumberbatch in the role and not using someone of like a Spanish or Latin descent like
Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah. So, yeah, Benicio would have made sense. He would have made sense. He's a bit of an older guy, and
I think Benedict does a pretty good job, though. I think he's okay.
Yeah, but
fine.
It's very much a different
very
interpretation of the character.
Now, this is something a bit silly. I kind of found this amusing. Of all the titles proposed for the film, including many joke titles, Damon Lindelof, who was one of the writers, actually preferred, and this is clearly a joke, Star Trek Transformers 4. I quite like that. He said he thought that was the best one. He goes, it's technically available. We can actually still make that film. Star Trek Transformers 4.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah. Now, we've spoken about this on previous episodes, and this is kind of getting more into kind of the, like how the films kind of all make sense and whatnot. But Chekhov actually spends much of the film in engineering rather than the bridge, so that he actually does not interact with Khan. This is in keeping with Star Trek Space Seed, which actually aired before Chekhov was actually added to the cast of the original series. Ironically, Chekhov is the only crew member Khan interacted with directly in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Khan's face-to-face interaction with the rest of the crew on board the Enterprise is a first since Space Seed.
Yeah, I love that bit of trivia. I never even really thought about it, hey?
I kind of knew, and I remember when we were talking about Wrath of Khan, I was blowing up about the fact that he never kind of actually met Khan in the original series. So it's kind of nice that they kind of tried to kind of give that some credence a little bit.
It's quite funny, though.
Yeah, I know.
The Klingons in this movie are given, a reboot makeover, as it were. They were actually redesigned by a man called Neville Page.
Oh, yeah?
And I don't know if you know who Neville Page is.
I actually don't.
He is a long-time creature designer in film, and he actually is a series judge on the show Face Off on Sci-Fi. I don't know if you've ever seen that show.
No, I haven't actually.
It's a great show, a competition show for budding makeup artists in Hollywood. People who want to get into filmmaking and designing characters and doing all that stuff. And just a few episodes ago in the new season, they did a Star Trek theme, and the theme of it was that they had 2 hours to create like a throwback creature from like an original series, and then based on that they had to reboot the character.
Yep.
And give it a modern take.
Oh, nice.
And they had Michael Dorn on there, and Jonathan Frakes came in as well, and they were special guest judges on the episode as well. So a nice connection there, with Neville Page.
Yeah, nice one. I think the design's pretty good, to be honest with you. I think it looks nice. It doesn't look like a Klingon in some regards.
It is. It's very, very updated. And again, it's a reinterpretation. You can't just do the same thing over and over again. You got to try something fresh, and some things may hit, some things may not, and everyone's always going to have a critical opinion, so whatever.
Oh, definitely. Last but not least, Mickey Rourke was actually considered for the role of Khan Noonien Singh. I'm really glad they didn't go down that path, because it would have been really different.
As much as I said I'd love to see Benicio del Toro in the role, Mickey Rourke, not so much.
But you know what, man? Mickey Rourke would have hammed it up big time, and it would have been memorable.
Yeah.
It would have been totally. I'm not too sure it would have been good. It's a little like when Christopher Lloyd played a Klingon in.
Yeah.
I think it was Star Trek 5, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mickey Rourke would have... I know this sounds kind of a bit strange, but talking about Mickey Rourke for a moment. Do you remember when he was in Iron Man 2 as Whiplash?
Yeah, he
I
put on that Russian accent.
I actually thought he was probably one of the better parts of Iron Man 2, and he was reasonably memorable, but just the film kind of let him down a little bit. I don't think he's certainly not a bad actor.
No, but he's not a world-renowned thespian either.
But keep in mind too, he made Marv pretty memorable in Sin City.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best role I've seen him in.
Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he, in that? But you're right, he's made a lot of rubbish too. Anyway, shall we move on to our main discussion?
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
The movie starts with the Enterprise, the crew. We see Kirk and McCoy on this planet. And Kirk has stolen something from this primitive race and he's being chased. And, I don't mind this opening. He's running through this red forest and everything, and he runs into McCoy, and the whole thing turns out to be a distraction because what they're actually doing is trying to stop a volcano erupting and wiping out these people. And, of course, they say that they break the Prime Directive by revealing the Enterprise to these people, which is true, but they're already breaking the Prime Directive by interfering in the first place and trying to stop the volcano.
It's an interesting kind of trope, because it's almost like you're showing up in the movie at the end of another adventure, aren't you? There's already an adventure kind of happened, and you're right. Kirk and Bones are running away from this kind of what appears to be a very kind of primitive race, and you're right. There's kind of this conundrum about whether they should break the Prime Directive or not, isn't there?
So it's an interesting sequence. I'm not sure it quite makes sense because, like I said, I think they're already interfering, regardless of revealing the Enterprise to these people. I didn't like the idea of having the Enterprise underwater.
You didn't like that?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit silly just having it under the ocean like that.
There's a lot of silliness in Star Trek, though. I mean, just the fact that Commander Kirk is a commander to begin with is silly. I mean, how old is he? He looks like he's in his mid to late 20s, maybe 30s,
maybe 30. Yeah. So I don't know. It still looks good. I like the look of the primitive people. It was quite interesting. It was alien yet primitive. I like the red forest. I like seeing the Enterprise come up from the ocean. I mean, it was very interesting looking visually, regardless of not actually liking the idea that they've hidden it under the ocean.
You're right. I thought that the production design was not too bad. It looked kind of nice. All the red stuff and the way the kind of inhabitants kind of looked. It is kind of is what it is a little bit. Like they're kind of running along, and they don't they kind of kill like a creature, and kind of Bones yells at Coke like, "That was our ride," or something like that. And
I thought that was funny.
Man, Bones is the best part of these films because he just nails it. He really does like a really nice, very loving kind of interpretation of DeForest Kelley, and kind of plays it with a lot of love,
He really does.
And they kind of get there, and anyway, the ship descends from, or I should say, ascends, from the ocean, and actually, because don't they jump into the water and they go down to the ship?
Exactly, yeah. They swim in to the ship and then make their escape. But the primitive people see them, and I guess they start worshipping it as some sort of deity or god.
Yeah, they do. They worship it because once the Enterprise disappears, they kind of have this kind of above ground shot of them kind of putting into the sand what looks like the Enterprise, don't they?
Exactly.
So you can only assume that this primitive culture is going to take this as a pivotal moment in their history.
Exactly. They're influencing how these people see the world that they live in.
Oh, totally.
And this leads to Kirk being demoted. And it's not only this event, the inciting event, it is the fact that Spock includes every fine detail in the report, that he was down in the volcano, that they flew over the primitive race in order to save him, and the whole thing is laid out.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's and obviously Kirk is really, really irritated with Spock, isn't he?
He is, and so is Uhura, because
Yeah.
Spock was ready to just die.
Yep.
He'd accepted it. You can't reveal yourself to these people, Kirk.
Don't
Just
get me
let die.
don't get me started about the whole Uhura Spock thing. It's just,
Yeah.
it just feels really weird, and
Yeah.
I keep trying to watch this film from the perspective of someone that's never watched Star Trek before. And you know what, man? There's a reason why it made $500 million, because it's popular. It's well-made cinema. It's a really well-made movie. J.J. Abrams clearly knows what he's doing, but there's just not a lot of love for the characters there.
No, exactly right. And that's the whole thing. Like, it works that Kirk is kind of at odds with Spock because they're our main characters. It was set up in the first one. We are going to follow the Kirk and Spock story.
But Zachary Quinto plays Spock so differently from Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah. And to throw in the whole Uhura thing, also being upset with Spock, just so annoying.
It kind of, I would have been happier if Uhura had a relationship with another crew member that we'd never heard of before. That would have made a lot more sense for me to actually round out her character, rather than kind of round out Uhura with Spock a little bit. It just kind of confused me a little bit. And again, I know I'm nitpicking, man, and I don't want to nitpick. I want to just watch this movie from the perspective of never seeing Star Trek before, but it's impossible for me. I can't do it. I have to watch this movie. And they keep trying to like do these little homages to like previous films a little bit before. Like, I think there's one stage where Spock actually says the lines in a completely different context. He goes, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, which is clearly a reference to Wrath of Khan. Clearly.
Very much.
And it's just, I wish all that stuff was gone. I wish this was just like individual kind of moments that are unique to all these characters, and they just, I kind of suffered with a little bit. I think I like the adventure and the filmmaking more than I do the characters themselves in this movie.
Yeah, it's way too early in this franchise for them to be throwing back to Wrath of Khan, because that movie was earned. You know, they'd had a whole series and a movie to build the characters. So when the events of Wrath of Khan take place, it was earned. And this is, for all intents and purposes, a prequel. These people are way too young, way too early in their careers, way too unfamiliar with each other, really. They're building a friendship here to have it be any kind of real impact.
I kind of wish a lot of if they were going to do a reboot of Star Trek, then they really genuinely should have done a reboot. A proper reboot. Like, I don't really mind them using the Kirk and the Spock and the Uhura characters, but don't have it correlate any way whatsoever with the original series or Next Generation or Voyager or DS9. I know they don't refer to any of those kind of things, but they go to great lengths to do these little kind of nuggets every now and then to make you think about the previous films.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I praised the 2009 film for. I mean, I know you didn't like it very much, but I really liked it because they were telling us that they are going a completely tangent way. We are breaking away from original Star Trek and we're going to do our own thing and tell you new stories. And then immediately they give us a rehash of a much loved story.
Oh, very much so. And as I said to you before, man, I think it's the best way for me to put this is that I don't hate these movies. I really don't. I think they're really well told. They're really, like, when I say $185 million, you can see that money on the screen in this movie. Big time. It's effects ridden. It's really well put together. The characters, the performances are fine. It's just from a perspective of really liking Star Trek a lot and watching all those TV shows. It's a small slap in the face to them, a bit. But you know what, man? Like, this is the direction that Star Trek's going, is it? I think the Enterprise and Voyages and DS9, all that stuff's in the past, isn't it?
Exactly right. The story continues to unfold. Like I said, Kirk is demoted back to being first officer to Pike.
You meet this family, don't you? You meet this family that you're not too sure what they're kind of doing, but there is this young couple who do a visit to a hospital, don't they? And actually visit their small daughter who's clearly got some kind of debilitating illness.
Yeah, and we get a whole sequence without dialogue, just events unfolding. They visit the little girl. She's obviously very sick, probably dying, going by the scale of how sick she looks. He meets with a mysterious character, and it is Benedict Cumberbatch as John Harrison. And he, in the smallest bit of dialogue, offers to save his daughter, and then it just continues on. No dialogue. This guy goes to work. He works for Starfleet. He goes into a highly secure location. He does something on a computer, and then he blows the whole place up.
I actually didn't mind that sequence.
Well, I recognize the actor.
Yeah, who is it?
He, I can't remember the actor's name, but he was in Doctor Who.
Was he? You're right, he was.
In the early years of the reboot.
Wasn't he the boyfriend of the original assistant?
Yeah, he played Mickey. So it was interesting to see him there. But yeah, it just sets up these whole events of like, why did this person want to destroy a secret Starfleet installation or a highly secure Starfleet installation?
Yeah, well, it's actually revealed in the next sequence, because what happens is that the installation gets blown up, and then all the leaders of the starships have some kind of meeting, including Captain Kirk, who gets reinstated as first officer under Captain Pike's leadership. So they actually meet up with the wonderful Peter Weller, who is, I actually think, from my perspective, a bit of a shining light in this film.
Well, whenever I think of Peter Weller, I immediately think RoboCop.
Oh, you have to. But you know what, man? He was great in The Naked Lunch as well. He was in Cronenberg's The Naked Lunch.
Yeah.
And which is a really strange, out there, bizarro film. And certainly not for everyone. Absolutely, if you're not into that kind of stuff, you probably shouldn't see it. But it's a pretty kind of interesting performance.
Yeah. He was also Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I was going
to say that too.
And another connection as well, as I mentioned, I loved seeing Leonard Nimoy in one of my all-time favorite TV shows, Fringe. Peter Weller did an episode of Fringe, a very pivotal episode in the series Mythos.
Yep.
As a, not to give too much away, but he played a time traveler, and he has a moment with the main character of Walter Bishop. It's probably the best episode of the entire series.
Oh, wow, nice.
And he plays like the guest star of the episode. So track that one down as well. I think the episode is called The White Tulip.
I think I might do Fringe at some point. I think I've done, half of season 1, and I need to kind of soldier on and just keep going with it.
Yeah, so having him show up here as Admiral Marcus is fantastic. And I think you said it perfectly. It's like a breath of fresh air on the film to have a man of this gravitas here in this film.
And again, once again, J.J. Abrams and the writers in particular are playing on the history of Star Trek a little bit, because the name Marcus is it's a familiar name, isn't it, in the Star Trek history? I mean, in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, we meet Dr. Carol Marcus, who is clearly Shatner's love interest, or old flame, I should say.
Yes, and mother to his son David.
Mother to his son David, who has a pivotal role in Star Trek 3, who gets killed, doesn't he?
Yeah, he gets killed by the
crazy Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd Klingon, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Who in Star Trek 6, Kirk can't really forgive the Klingons, can he?
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're kind of getting a bit off track. So yeah. So as I said, the Marcus name is a name very, very familiar for anyone who's kind of into Star Trek, and they actually get a young Carol Marcus, played by, who is she played by? Alice Eve, who's a British actress from what I understand. Yeah, she kind of shows up on the ship,
just like they are doing with Khan. They kind of play her character close to the chest as well, because she boards the Enterprise under a different name. She doesn't reveal that she is the daughter of Admiral Marcus, and that's not revealed until later. And even Spock finds out and doesn't tell anybody. He confronts her about it, but doesn't tell anybody until it actually needs to be revealed to them.
And again, I kind of come back to watching these films with any of these kind of pretenses. If you knew nothing about Star Trek, none of this bothers you, does it? You don't know who Marcus is. You don't know who Dr. Carol Marcus is, or any of that kind of stuff. Like, you have none of this kind of baggage associated when you're watching this film, where I kind of feel like I can't get rid of the baggage, Cory. I wish I could.
Right.
I wish I could, but I just can't.
Yeah, if you'd seen 2009 Star Trek and you'd seen this one, there is nothing in these films that tell you that one day Carol Marcus is going to be the woman who gives birth to Kirk's son. Like,
yep.
None of that history is set up here. There's nothing that forebodes that history at all. It's just she's there.
She's just another character, isn't she?
And you don't know who she's is or is going to be.
And that's it. So, bit of a spoiler. I don't think they're going to go down that path, but you know what, man, they might. Who knows? So where are we in the story? We Dr. Carol Marcus shows up, and it actually soon gets discovered that Khan, the facility that they kind of blew up in London, wasn't actually an information facility. It was actually a secret weapons facility that Peter Weller's character had kind of put together. And Khan was actually like some kind of secret agent that worked for the facility. So he'd kind of gone rogue, hadn't he?
And Admiral Marcus gives Kirk permission to track him down. They find out that he's on Kronos.
Which, speaking of Kronos, I actually think that's probably one of the best sequences in the film. I like all that stuff down on Klingon, where I think they kind of get to the edge of the neutral zone, and Kirk does this bit of a speech that they can't violate the Prime Directive, so they're actually going to do an away mission, and Spock and Uhura join him on that away mission, don't they?
It's very much about vengeance here. Kirk can't get past that John Harrison had killed Pike. Pike had died during an attack on the assembly, as we mentioned.
Which Kirk is pretty dirty about, because he saw Pike as a bit of a father figure in some regards, didn't he?
Exactly. At the very least, a mentor. So he's pretty much tricked into doing it. Like, Marcus knew this would happen, and he knew that Kirk would go after John Harrison for it. And then they do this whole setup about the 72 prototype photon torpedoes. As they're being brought onto the Enterprise, Scotty refuses to sign for them because he's got no specs on them. He has no idea what they are. And Kirk accepts his resignation.
He does, really hastily as well. And you know what, man, Scotty's being a bit stubborn, truthfully, isn't he?
I know, I liked it. I thought it was very organic for the character.
Scotty, I need you to approve those weapons.
Do you know what this is, Captain?
I don't have time for a lecture, Scotty.
Do you know what this is?
It's a warp core.
It's a radioactive catastrophe waiting to happen. A subtle shift in magnetic output from, say, firing one or more of 6 dozen torpedoes with an unknown payload could set off a chain reaction which would kill every living thing on this ship. Letting those torpedoes on board the Enterprise is the last straw.
What was the first straw?
There are plenty of straws. How about Starfleet confiscating my transwarp equation, and now some madman's using it to hop across the galaxy? Where do you think he got it from?
Orders, Scotty.
That's what scares me. This is clearly a military operation. Is that what we are now? Because I thought we were explorers.
Sign for the torpedoes, that's an order.
Right, well, you leave me no choice but to resign my duties.
Oh, come on, Scotty.
You're giving me no choice, sir.
You're not giving me
I
much
will
of
not
a
stand by
You
and
just make an
do you
acceptance sign?
accept my resignation or not?
I do! I do. You are relieved, Mr. Scott.
Jim, for the love of God, do not use those torpedoes.
Yeah, no, I liked it too, man. The fact that he kind of, stood up for kind of what he believed in and kind of just went down that path. He was pretty unrelenting, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had the level head.
Yes.
And that was, again, just showing that Kirk, he hasn't thought about this. He's reacting in a violent way, really.
Yep.
And he doesn't quite see the forest for the trees, as it were.
No, you're right.
So they head over to Kronos with Uhura and Spock,
who, according to in Star Trek 6, can't speak Klingon, but here she clearly can.
And didn't she did it in the last movie as well.
I really should stop bringing that stuff up, but it just kind of, it's in my head, man. I can't avoid it. Anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah. So they're on Kronos. They encounter a Klingon patrol, and this patrol immediately just wants to kill them.
Yep, totally.
They've got no qualms about listening to why they're there.
Doesn't Uhura actually say to Spock and Kirk before they get out, so like, they will capture us, they will torture us, and then they will kill us. Like, there's just no, mucking around with the Klingons. They don't stuff about.
Yeah. And it wasn't the most covert of missions. I mean, at least these Klingons don't know that they're from Starfleet. They went to the lengths of making sure that they didn't have any official Starfleet clothing or weapons with them.
Yes.
And they are in a commandeered Klingon vessel.
Yeah, because Peter Weller makes it pretty clear early in the film that the war with Klingon is inevitable. He goes, they've shot on half a dozen of our starships in recent times, and it's not a matter of kind of if, it's when. Like, we will be going to war with Klingons, so we can kind of see there's a bit of a long game that we'll kind of get into later in the story a bit with Marcus, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. But he pretty much wants to incite war without the Klingons realizing that it was Starfleet that initiated it.
That's right. So Uhura has this discussion with the Klingons, and then a big battle kind of breaks out, a big kind of action sequence, which is pretty good. And out of nowhere, Khan shows up, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he just single-handedly takes out all these Klingons.
Yeah, totally. He's a total badass.
Yeah, it's setting him up to be a total badass and show you how strong again. And, this is pretty much like just throwing in our faces that this is Khan.
Oh, yeah, big time.
I mean, as much as they want to keep his identity secret, keep you thinking that he is just John Harrison, there is nothing that is telling us that this guy is just some rogue agent. He is super strong. He's very smart. And it's obvious. It's obvious from this point on who he is.
So without kind of much kind of, he doesn't really kind of cause any problems, does he? He just gives himself up, doesn't he? He kind of goes, look, I surrender. I am your prisoner now, doesn't he? Because he realizes pretty quickly that he was going to fire the photon torpedoes on the Klingons, wasn't he? And,
exactly.
And Khan didn't want that because there was stuff that Kirk doesn't know about, and he doesn't want those photon torpedoes being kind of fired. So he just gives himself up immediately, and he's their prisoner straight away.
Who the hell are you?
A remnant of a time long past. Genetically engineered to be superior so as to lead others to peace in a world at war. But we were condemned as criminals, forced into exile. For centuries we slept, hoping when we awoke things would be different.
But as a result of the destruction of Vulcan, your Starfleet began to aggressively search distant quadrants of space. My ship was found adrift. I alone was revived.
I looked up John Harrison. Until a year ago, he didn't exist.
John Harrison was a fiction created the moment I was awoken by your Admiral Marcus to help him advance his cause. A smokescreen to conceal my true identity. My name is Khan.
Why would a Starfleet admiral ask a 300-year-old frozen man for help?
Because I am better.
At what?
Everything. Alexander Marcus needed to respond to an uncivilized threat in a civilized time, and for that, he needed a warrior's mind. My mind. To design weapons and warships.
You are suggesting the Admiral violated every regulation he vowed to uphold simply because he wanted to exploit your intellect.
He wanted to exploit my savagery. Intellect alone is useless in a fight, Mr. Spock. You can't even break a rule. How would you be expected to break bone?
Yeah, and it's a great moment for Sulu as well, because Sulu comes in acting as captain of the Enterprise and gives a tremendous speech to Khan about giving up.
Yeah, totally. He totally kind of gives up himself. And I really like that sequence with Sulu as the captain. In fact, and I know we talked about this before with George Takei in Star Trek 6, like, 'cause when he was the kind of captain in that, in all those sequences were great, and I thought this sequence was just as cool. And if they were kind of going to go down that path of possibly having some kind of TV show, it wouldn't bother me at all if Captain Sulu was the captain. I'd love to see that. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Maybe they'll get around to it one day with John Cho in the role.
And you know what, man? John Cho was really good at it, man. I'd love to see he, like, even if it was like maybe not like a big 4, 5, 6 season thing, maybe it was just like a mini series or like a 13 episode like kind of HBO thing or something like that, man.
On Netflix.
Yeah, I'd totally be down with it, and it would be really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep in mind too that Kirk has actually contravened his direct orders by taking Khan as a prisoner, because he was given pretty clear orders to shoot those torpedoes and actually destroy Khan, wasn't he?
He takes him prisoner, and they get to talking, and they get to testing his blood to find out who he actually is, because they know that something's not right here.
And then he reveals himself to be 300 years old.
Exactly, and they actually do a little drop on the tribbles as well, because McCoy starts injecting dead tribbles with Khan's blood to test it. But yeah, is it fair to say? I know it's kind of connecting to the original series, but enough with the tribbles. It's not that interesting. I know it is just a little drop thing. And again, if you hadn't seen the original series, you would have no idea about it.
You'd have no idea, not even like a slight idea about it. But anyway, that's fine.
So all this goes on. They find out who he actually is. Kirk is finally being talked into just taking him back to stand trial. He has committed crimes. That doesn't, we're not the executioners here.
Yep. And then Peter Weller shows up again, doesn't he?
Exactly. And he's got this massive starship.
Keep in mind, Peter Weller's daughter, Dr. Carol Marcus, is on board the Enterprise.
Yeah, but that's not really even a problem, because he almost immediately just beams her over to his ship.
Yeah, and she's obviously like totally appalled by his behavior, because when he shows up, he essentially threatens Captain Kirk and sort of says, well, you've contravened your orders. I'm going to destroy you now because you clearly can't do what I've asked you to do.
The plan was that Kirk would incite war with Klingon, and then Marcus would have a big war that he always wanted. He wanted to take on the Klingons and get rid of them. Yeah. He sees them as a blight.
That's right. So don't they actually disrupt the transporters for some reason? And he actually has to get from the... Scotty shows up. That's right. Scotty shows up and infiltrates Peter Weller's ship. And somehow they have to get from the Enterprise to Peter Weller's ship so they can do something, yeah?
They need to get over there. Admiral Marcus was ready to just destroy the Enterprise. It was an all right moment with Kirk saying, look, I'll give myself up, don't hurt the crew, but then Marcus was just going to do it anyway.
Yep.
So Kirk has no choice. He allies with Khan, and the two of them are just going to go over in this pretty... all right sequence of them jumping from the Enterprise through space.
Didn't we see that sequence? Didn't Data do something very similar where the transporters were disrupted and he had to kind of go from the ship to ship and he had to like shoot himself through space to kind of get there?
I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I think it might have been maybe Insurrection or Nemesis. It was kind of one of the... Yeah, I can't remember exactly which one, you're right. But I'm pretty sure he did something similar. But it was a pretty cool sequence, wasn't it?
It was. And, Scotty running all over the Vengeance up and down the huge corridors.
Yes.
I thought was quite good.
Yeah, and doesn't he get held up by some ginormous kind of security guard that kind of catches him doing something? He's like, what are you doing? And Scotty's kind of being all coy and trying to like talk his way out of the situation and whatnot, which he kind of ends up doing.
Yeah, he managed it because he's opening one of the hatches,
yeah, that's right,
docking bays or something like that,
so they can get access.
Yeah, and that guy gets sucked out.
Meanwhile, as they're shooting across space, isn't there like helmet cracking and it's about to kind of it's all very tense, isn't it?
In the meantime, Spock has spoken with old Spock, and gotten some background on Khan.
I was a bit confused about that.
Yeah, because Spock pretty much says like, I can't influence your future, and then immediately
Tells him.
Goes into the whole thing, yeah.
I know, yeah, I know.
It's a bit silly.
I found that a bit forced, truthfully, the whole old Spock thing. I felt it was a bit unnecessary as well. I reckon they probably could have worked it out without him, but possibly not. I don't know.
But, anyway, he's got some info on Khan. He knows that Khan's probably going to betray them, which he does. He flat out kills, with his bare hands, he kills Admiral Marcus right in front of his daughter.
In a real full-on fit of rage, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he takes the vengeance.
And doesn't he kind of strike a deal with Commander Spock? And he kind of, he says, look, I want such and such, or, he wants his 72 pods back, doesn't he?
Yeah, because we'd established that he had hidden away his cryogenically frozen crew in these photon torpedoes that he had designed for Marcus. At what point he managed to do that, I don't know.
I don't know either.
And it seems awfully dangerous to hide crew in photon torpedoes, but yeah, it's a bit weak.
It's a bit strange. That I kind of found it a bit odd, to be honest with you. I think I kind of zoned out a little bit.
But Spock, having spoken with his older self, had decided to remove all the crew from the torpedoes. He returns them to Khan on the Vengeance, but has armed them.
Yeah.
And it takes out the Vengeance, which I think also, they hit the Enterprise as well. So both ships are heading down towards Earth, and the Enterprise manages to get itself back up, but the Vengeance crashes into San Francisco.
It's pretty spectacular, isn't it?
It is. It's almost like that...
Doesn't the warp core go offline as well, and Kirk has to kind of get down to engineering, and there's this big sequence with him climbing up to the top of the room, and he has to hold on to something and kick this thing back into place so the warp core comes back online, so they actually retain some kind of navigation.
Yeah, that's what stops them from crashing into Earth.
So
he's managed to do that, and it's like the qualm that people have with the Man of Steel, where they destroy a city. I mean, a lot of people died.
A lot of people died. Yeah. Big time. Thousands of people.
They took out half the city.
No,
it's
totally
a bit
mad,
much,
isn't it?
Yeah, of course, Khan doesn't die.
Well, he can't.
He's too strong. Yeah, he's not going to die in that crash. And Kirk dies.
What are they
sending Spock into a fit of rage?
And this is where I have a real issue, because they reversed the situation. Of course, basically what happens is that Kirk goes into the warp core, gets the warp core back online, radiation's kind of everywhere, and he gets a call from Scotty and says, you better come down here quickly, and Spock runs out, and they basically recreate the scene from Wrath of Khan with Kirk on the other side and Spock on this side, and it's not nearly as effective, is it?
Out of danger. You saved the crew.
He used what he wanted against them. That's a nice move.
It is what you would have done.
And this is what you would have done. It was only logical. I'm scared, Spock. Help me not be. How do you choose not to feel?
I do not know. Right now I am failing.
I want you to know why I couldn't let you die. Why I went back for you.
Because you are my friend.
No, and it's like I said, it's going back to just rehashing.
Why can't it just be its own film, though? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why can't it just simply be its own film with its own ideas? It just feels really cheap. I mean, I can accept all this, even with all my love of Star Trek and watching it and doing this 11 film, or 12 film, I should say, series rewatch that we've kind of done. And man, there's been some highs and lows, man, totally. There's some good films and bad films, but most of them are pretty good. Why can't they have their own kind of ideas and kind of great moments that I could kind of talk about? I just don't understand why they had to recreate the scene from Wrath of Khan, but with Kirk on the other side. Because there's not as much weight there. Definitely not.
Definitely not. So Spock goes after Khan, and they get into a big fight sequence, running across San Francisco, jumping on garbage transports and whatnot. And Spock is pretty much ready to kill Khan.
And then Uhura says, "You can't kill him. He's the only thing that can save Kirk."
Exactly, because in the meantime, McCoy has found that the Tribbles have come back to life, the ones he injected with Khan's blood. So they can use Khan's blood to bring Kirk back.
Yeah, I know.
So Uhura comes down. And I think that was probably the best moment of the fight, with Uhura like shooting Khan over and over and over.
Yep.
She's got her phaser on stun. Or I think it might even be on the highest setting, and she has to just keep shooting him and shooting him and shooting him, and he just won't go down. Probably the best moment of the thing, but ultimately they capture him and I guess give Kirk a blood transfusion or something, and then just put Khan back in his cryo tube.
And that's basically the end of the film, isn't it?
Yep, and they're gonna head off on their 5-year mission.
Yeah,
which is...
and they make a big point of saying that a few times, don't they? Like, we're going.
Yeah.
Like, I think Bone says it right at the end. He complains. He goes, "Oh, I can't believe I'm going on a 5 years in space," and gets really kind of uppity about it.
And that's, of course, the premise of the original series: deep space travel, going where no man has gone before. That whole monologue.
Oh, definitely. So yeah. Anyway, so it's been an enjoyable ride, hasn't it?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Shall we give this one a rating?
I'm going to give this 2 ratings. Okay. I'm going to give this I've never watched a single episode of Star Trek in my life, so I just watched this movie. I would probably give it a warp 7.5. I reckon that's probably where you'd probably be. It's a pretty good film, yeah? It's pretty enjoyable, but if you've grown up on it, I'm going to give it probably about a warp 4, warp 5. That's where I'm kind of sitting with it. I enjoyed this film. For some reason, I enjoyed this film more when I watched it at the movies and I focused on it, and I just kind of left my brain at the door a little bit. But now that we've kind of gone through it and I'm thinking about everything and I'm thinking about the history of it all, I'm kind of enjoying it a little less.
Yeah, I think I can agree with you there. As a standalone movie, if it was just 2009 and then this movie, you're right. It would be up there. It's a pretty epic film.
Because I think one of my comments about this film is that it's a very exciting film. Man, the action's great in it, man. That sequence at the end when the ship is kind of rotating and there's like those gravity effects with Kirk and whatnot. It's cool, man. It looks great.
Yeah, you're right. So it is. It would deserve like I might even push it to an 8, like warp 8 on that. But yeah, going back and knowing about how much this rips off from Wrath of Khan, just redoes it or tries to subvert it in some clever way, it really is like a warp 3.
Yeah, it's kind of about that mark. It has some. It could have been so good though if it just kind of had its own unique moments. I wish Benedict Cumberbatch wasn't Khan. I wish it was just John Harrison. Truthfully, I would have.
He could have just been his own character.
It could have just been John Harrison, the rogue agent from Section 13 or whatever it was, for Starfleet. That's kind of really pissed off, and I would have accepted it and just moved on. And if kind of Benedict was able to kind of inject his own kind of unique character in there, I would have liked that a bit more too, because he's such a great actor, and for him to kind of be forced to kind of play a previous character, like such an iconic previous character as well, it's a little unfair on him as an actor.
Honestly, I think even if he wasn't in it at all, if the bad guy was Admiral Marcus, and delving into that history with Kirk and Marcus and of course Carol, that would have been way better.
That would have been enough, hey?
Inciting war with the Klingons. That would have been a fantastic story. But no, they had to throw in Benedict Cumberbatch and make it Khan and blah, blah, blah. And, it's distracting and frustrating.
There's too many bad guys, man.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that whole Batman kind of thing where you can't just have one bad guy. You've got to have the Joker there, and you've got to have Bane, and you've got to have somebody else as well. All these movies, they try to up the ante relentlessly, but I'm not convinced they need to up the ante all the time. I'm satisfied, man. So yeah, it's one thing I was thinking about when I was watching this, that I was yearning for the smaller Star Trek stories a little bit when I was watching this a bit. Yeah, so I'm hoping eventually they get back to making another TV show, man, because I'll be watching that for sure, definitely.
Yeah,
and I'll probably forgive it and just watch it anyway. That's my rant over, Cory. Thanks for listening.
All right, well, let's get into our civilians log. We did have a message here from Mike Romulus Lamontagne.
Yep.
And he wrote, the more Star Trek is in J.J. Abrams' hands, the more he seems to be turning it into a clone of Star Wars. Case in point, Benedict Cumberbatch was the reboot era's Khan. In the original series, Khan, played by the immortal Ricardo Montalban, was South American, not English, like Cumberbatch is. This movie is a pale imitation of Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. It is acceptable, if only barely, but is there any need for the bra and panties scene? Oh, yeah, that one with Carol Marcus. I mean, she's hot, but yeah, not necessary. This is an example of unnecessary sensationalism. Abrams is pandering to a general audience, then I suppose a scene like this works. I haven't seen this in a while, so if I get this mixed up, I think the roles of life and death are reversed from Star Trek Wrath of Khan, with the resurrection happening in this movie. And what is with the makeup that happened to the Klingons? They looked weird as well as acted weird. So I don't think Mike much likes this film either, and he's probably in the same boat as we are in how we feel about it.
And our friend Dewey as well. She didn't like this film either, did she?
No. She did say in her last bit of feedback that she didn't like it. So even though I'm surprised we didn't get an email from Dewey, at the same time, I'm not surprised. Right. She probably doesn't care.
But yeah, man, Mike, I totally agree with you. I think it's actually been pretty clear as well that Abrams has come out and sort of said that he's only really a fan of the original series. I don't think he's watched much Voyager, DS9 or Next Gen. I don't think he really cares about the canon of Star Trek when it kind of gets that far down the line. He's totally doing a new thing here. I'm not even that convinced that Gene Roddenberry would really be that into this version of Star Trek that much. Apparently when Voyager kind of showed up in DS9, he wasn't a big fan of even going down that path a little bit, and that was nothing compared to what they're doing here. So Abrams is such a weird director for me, and it's a point that I kind of wanted to make in the last film, but he's a director that I don't think has ever really been kind of really proven. Everything he's made, everything has been a home run before a single frame has kind of been shot. I mean, don't misunderstand me, Cory. He's a great TV writer, producer. He did Felicity. Did he do Felicity? Is that right? Isn't that where he started? And he did Lost, and he did Fringe as well, didn't he?
He produced Fringe. He made Alias as well. So,
yeah. So from a TV perspective, he's got the rungs on the board, but from a movie point of view, I mean, he made MI3, Star Trek 2. And now he's doing Star Wars. The only film that was a 50-50 was Super 8 that he made. And I
really liked Super 8.
Really? I was the other way, man. I didn't think much of it. I think I liked the trailer more than I liked the movie. I remember thinking the trailer was pretty interesting, but the movie just didn't really do much for me. But it'll be interesting to see what he does with Star Wars at the end of the year. All signs point to it being pretty good. So yeah.
Okay, so moving on to Who Said This. Fun little game we're just playing on the social media for funsies. So if you think you know who said this line, then you can hit us up over there on our social media. All right, so this is a good one too. I like this one.
Oh, you ready?
So do you want to give me a count in?
All right, you ready? Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1, scene.
Did you hear that? I called him perfect hair.
Nice. Nice
my best
man.
accent I could go with.
You did pretty well then.
Give it away. Man.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so we'll put that out on our social media. If you're on Twitter, use the hashtag #RewatchQuote so we can find you there. And come on, just for a bit of fun.
Do it.
All right, so our next episode, I think it's going to be a surprise.
Yeah, let's just say, just keep looking. There's going to be something, but
yeah, we've got plans to do another film series. We won't announce that just yet because we're sort of just waiting to hit in those nails. But we'll definitely be back and discussing the new Star Trek Beyond, whenever that comes out. I think it's next year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's directed by Justin Lin this time, who one of the guys behind the Fast and the Furious franchise. Now, I know, not Fast. I think he kind of came on board in Fast 3 or 4 or something like that. And I've actually never seen those movies, but from what I understand, people quite like those films.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And like I said, we'll definitely be doing another film series. And just come over and like our social media or follow us on Twitter, and just keep an eye out for when we will be back for another series.
Oh, definitely. But it's been a very enjoyable watch, man. I've kind of liked going through them. As I said, man, some highs and lows, some good films, not so good films, but it's been an interesting experience doing them sequentially, like 1 through 12, and doing it really quickly. It's been good.
Yeah, definitely ready to start watching something else, because we've been all Star Trek for a few months, so
I know.
It's time to step back and clear our heads.
Especially when you throw in like an interstate move in there as well. It's all happening. Anyway, so that's it for this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by joining our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at RewatchPod, and visit our webpage, rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it to therewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. It'll only take you a minute, and you can tell the whole world how awesome we are and how much you love the show.
It takes a minute, guys, please. It's really helpful if you can do it, so it'd be great.
Exactly right. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, Nathan.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Cory. Thanks for committing to such a epic series.
We got through it all.
We did get through it.
All right. Well, until next time, I'll just say, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I only know what I can do.
Nice. And as a mission of this duration has never been attempted, I defer to your good judgment, Captain.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended. The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in Title 17, aka Fair Use. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Copyright 2015, The Rewatch Podcast.